As the country observes 16 days of activism, most civil society organizations are concerned that there are too few shelters catering for gender-based violence victims. This is as South Africa marks this period. Sibongile Ndashe, Director of the Initiative for Strategic Litigation in Africa, joins us now for comment. Sibongile, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. Organization called Helping Hands says, well, there are too few shelters that cater for men facing gender-based violence. He says one in Limpopo and one in the Western Cape. The comment saying that, well, there needs to be more. Is that call taking away from the conversation that we should be having around gender-based violence, or does it enhance what we should be talking about?
I think there is a misunderstanding of what gender-based violence is. Gender-based violence, it's something or a term that was coined around 1992 to talk about violence that women face that is overwhelmingly gender-specific, right? And this is based on gender stereotype, the roles that women have. And so it is important that we understand the basis of this violence, that women face. This is not to say that men do not face violence. But if we do not see discrimination as a root cause of this violence that we are talking about, how men feel entitled to women's bodies, how when women are killed, it is because they've either said to be disrespectful in ways that men are not killed. So there may be men who face violence at home, but that's not gender-based violence, because that takes away from why the term gender-based violence was coined to distinguish this form of violence from other forms of violence.
Yeah. And so when we are raising the conversation around shelter for abused men, where should we place that?
This is in the general kind of criminal justice system, because what normally happens is when you have something that is very prevalent in society, then you have to take targeted measures, right, to attend to deal with that kind of a problem. We are saying that men may get violated or abused in the home, but it is not as prevalent as when women do. And that's why you have interventions like working with men, these interventions like positive masculinity, the recognition that there has to be attitudinal and behavioral changes that stops this violence that we are talking from. So here we are trying to compare two things that should not be compared. And that's part of the challenge that we are dealing with, this idea that when we are saying we must do something to protect women that face higher levels of violence. And then the question is, what about the men? What we are saying is that men do not face these levels of violence. And therefore, it should be possible for men to go to whole police stations, and be able to get that kind of support that they actually need. But this kind of one here and one here, it really detracts from the conversation and the nature of the crisis that we are dealing with.
Yeah. Now, what we would have heard, suppose, at the end of November during the G20 social gathering is the president now declaring gender-based violence as a national disaster. I would have thought he did that maybe several instances ago, but it seems to have resonated quite strongly around the G20 summit period. Was that a mere symbolic gesture, or do you think there's something to that declaration?
Of course it is symbolic. We had a very big political moment. All eyes were on us. This is not the first time. If you look at what it means to declare this national disaster, it's really not that different from what we already have in the National Strategic Plan to end gender-based violence and femicide. So this was a very performative intervention. The National Strategic Plan was adopted in 2020. There have been 2 presidential summits, the last one being in 2022. And most of the things that they are saying they are putting on this plan were part of the summit conversation. What we have been dealing with is a government that has a high appetite for deviations and distractions. There is a law that the president signed just before the elections last year, and that is the law that sets up the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. Yeah. We have been protesting about this law because this law has removed all the accountability features that are in the National Strategic Plan. Things like the interministerial committee, things like having this council at provincial and local government level. These are some of the things that they refuse to put in legislation, but have gone and picked up from the National Strategic Plan and put as part of this national disaster management. So what we are seeing here is a government that doesn't want to be held accountable, but very happy when there has been mass protest, digital campaigns, that they will come and offer a solution. And all that it takes is to look at previous agreements, look at processes and where we are. We are sitting with a very hollow legislation that sets up a council. It doesn't include funding, which is one of the things that we want. It doesn't deal with intergovernmental cooperation. It has removed the presidency as a champion. It has removed the interministerial coordination that is supposed to enable government departments to do that. But some aspects of this have been put into this national disaster plan. So what this tells you is that they don't want it in legislation because they do not want to be held accountable when it is in legislation. But whenever you have people protesting, then they will come and say that this is a solution. In September of 2024, we've got the Parliamentary Committee on the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. And what they are doing is not done with dismantling what this council is supposed to do. They are now saying this is not actually accountability council. They want it to just be an advisory council. So there is no seriousness right now in dealing with the response, by government.
So get a sense that there is an attempt to water down what the National Strategic Plan would have wanted to achieve. For example, we are just talking shelters now. Part of the things that Strategic Plan demands is the provision of those shelters, but not only that, a provision of well-trained frontline workers who will do the work of counseling those victims, but also that those shelters be resourced. I mean, it's just a tick box exercise? Are we actually meeting those targets that were set in the National Strategic Plan?
So the big fight right now is on Pillar 1 of the National Strategic Plan, which is about accountability, leadership, and coordination of the response. Because all of these other responses, like the criminal justice system, the care support and healing, which is Pillar 4, where the shelters are located, the ability to answer those questions is what lies with the proper coordination and leadership of the response. So right now, you have attempts, there are civil society that are providing this is not there in those ways. What we are seeing is the National Strategic Plan is 5 years, so a report has just been released, and there's supposed to be this midterm kind of evaluation of this National Strategic Plan. And you will see that most of the indicators that are there where we were supposed to have been have not been met. And the reason for that is that instead of following the plan as it was, we continue to respond to deviations and distractions. So it's a very populist and performative way of engaging with a serious problem like GBV. We know what the solution is. We have agreed to the solution. And what continues to lag behind is the effective implementation of the plan as it is. So those questions about shelters will continue to be questions until we have a council that is fit for purpose. Right now, what they are trying to do is to rush in this council and pretend like a council that has been allocated 5 million rand is going to do something. They want people to make themselves available to serve on this council, but this council is hollow. And what we have been saying is that government must fix this legislation so that we can actually have a proper institutional framework that allows us to respond. Those things that are there in Pillar 1 are very key to the response. Intergovernmental coordination is an important part of this response so that people are not sent from pillar to post, when they need services, but But these are the things they refuse to put in legislation.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is that the work of the council should be recognized in law in some kind of framework so that you have a way of holding people accountable in law if they are not delivering, as opposed to right now being just purely advisory.
That is what was agreed to. It's there in the institutional framework for the response of the National Strategic Plan. So this is not something that's just kind of coming up now, because we've had many national strategic plans before the 2020 strategic plan. But what we said in that one was that these plans always fall apart. So what we need to do is to have proper coordination at the highest level, right? And so what they have said now with this disaster plan, basically, is stronger national leadership. The national executive is going to become fully responsible. They are going to ensure faster implementation of the NSP, aligned strategies. But what I'm saying is these are the things that are in the National Strategic Plan that have been rehatched there to make a very desperate public happy all over again. But to those of us who have been following this process from the moment of the total shutdown in 2018 and the 24 demands, we know that these are the things that we have been consistently asking for that we know have not been delivered.
Sibongile Ndashe, appreciate your time, Director of the Initiative for Strategic Litigation in Africa. They're commenting on the campaigns that are currently on 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and femicide.